We're coming to you today from beautiful Springwood, and I have the privilege of having my beautiful granddaughter here with me. Hi, my name is Tiana. And Tiana and I have been having a discussion about how the occult came in the early 20th century. Why did it go from being about ancient grimoires to suddenly being about the New Age movement? And we know Aleister Crowley started the New Age movement. But there was a publishing company, and a lot of books published in around 1900 by one man who changed everything. Who was that man? How did he make magic accessible to ceremonial magicians, to Wiccans, and also to Obeah and voodoo practitioners? He changed the magical tradition around the planet. And yet, hardly anybody knows about this man. Why is this so? Why has he been left out of the history books? Let's find out a bit more about this man and his amazing publishing company. Are you interested in that, Sienna?
Yes, I am.
Would you like to come on that journey with us? If so, make sure you like, and if you really like it, share and subscribe, and we can keep bringing you content like that. And that'll be good fun, wouldn't it, Sienna?
Yeah.
Because people need to know about these forgotten pieces of occult history. So without further ado, let's find out about L.W. Laurence.
The de Laurence magical revolution, the truth about the foundations of Western magic in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Western magic, occult, obeah, and voodoo all converge on one person at one point in time. The truth about the foundations of Western magic in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Western magic, occult, obeah, and voodoo all converge on one person at one point in time. It is sad that he has been largely overlooked or unfairly discredited by modern writers on the occult. I would like to pause to re-examine the ontological context and cultural contributions of L.W. de Laurence.
De Laurence changed magic from being about dusty old medieval grimoires to the modern forms of magic that we are used to today, from Wicca all the way through to ceremonial magic. You may be very surprised to find about the amount of influence he had on West African traditions that have gone on to form voodoo in the 19th and 20th centuries.
Who was Laurent William de Laurence? Handsome, successful, wildly wealthy, and innovative, L.W. de Laurence walked his talk and was more responsible than any other for making magic accessible to popular Western culture. L.W. de Laurence, born March 20th, 1868, and passed away September 11th, 1936, was an American occultist, hypnotist, teacher, author, and publisher of esoteric and occult texts, primarily through de Laurence, Scott and Company of Chicago. Prior to his publishing career, de Laurence was a lecturer on and demonstrator of mesmerism and hypnotism. During the early 1900s, the de Laurence Institute of Hypnotism and Occult Philosophy and Suggestive Therapeutics gained both public and professional international acclaim with students from around the globe. During this period, he became an AM, PhD, LL.D, an instructor of hypnotism, psychology, and related studies at the American School of Psychology. In addition, he was a student of the Orient in practical psychology, metaphysical, alchemy, Kabbalah, occult, and natural philosophy, and the credited author of the then industry standard Medical Hypnosis and Practical Lessons in Hypnotism and Magnetism. He personally was the author of over 80 original works, as well as being a publisher for other occultists. L.W. de Laurence wrote many texts which are still being reprinted today. His was the first and largest dedicated esoteric publishing house. Think Llewellyn combined with Hay House. De Laurence became a very successful businessman. His company became a huge global concern, selling millions of books and tarot decks. He also was the world's first and largest business to supply magical and occult goods by mail order. In fact, de Laurence was a true pioneer in the mail order business. He was so successful that 125 years later, his business, founded in the early 1900s, still exists today. Any good marketing course teaches his mail order sales techniques. Although it has been said that his company has fizzled out, it still runs out of a business front located in Michigan City, Indiana.
With such a powerful presence in the world, we might ask, who was this mighty occultist, and what was this company that wields so much sway through such subtle means? All prophets had a prophet. Buddha came out of Hinduism. Jesus blended Judaism with Buddhism.
Muhammad blended Bedouin culture with Christian ideals. And 20th century occultists had Dr. L.W. de Laurence. Before Crowley, before Mathers, before Blavatsky, before Waite, before Rhonda Byrne, before J.K. Rowling, there was Lauren William de Laurence. These radical occultists were able to show the way only because they had the elevated view from the vantage point of standing on de Laurence's shoulders. De Laurence published much of his work a decade before the famous names began writing on the occult. He co-authored with his fellow Chicago resident, the respected William Walker Atkinson. These books have become the basis of most modern Western occultist traditions. For instance, the central philosophy of Crowley's AA, scientific illuminatism, was a catchy rewording of de Laurence and Atkinson's 1902 True Superior, Consecrated Science, and Spiritualism. You know, it really isn't an exaggeration to say that the works of de Laurence, who was a publisher of practical occultism, actually sparked the development of Pan-African mysticism, Black nationalism, and Afro-Caribbean traditions. He even changed the way traditional practices were carried out in places like Nigeria and Ghana. Historians pretty much all agree that de Laurence's writings found their way into a lot of the Afro-Latino traditions, and, interestingly, reprints of his most popular titles are still available today in Spanish-language editions. His ideas became so woven into Western voodoo, hoodoo, and obeah that honestly, these traditions wouldn't look the way they do today if it weren't for his work. His books were so incredibly popular in the Bahamas, the West Indies, and the Caribbean islands that it's honestly hard to say what Magick really looked like there before his writings became part of the picture. There were even accusations that his books empowered everyday people so much they could stir up riots and political unrest. The reality is, the ruling class just didn't feel safe anymore from the justice of the common folks. They were so rattled by this wave of empowerment that all de Laurence stock and publications are actually banned in Jamaica. According to the most recent rules from Jamaica Customs, all publications of de Laurence, Scott and Company of Chicago in the United States of America relating to divination, magic, occultism, or supernatural arts are still not allowed into the country. This ban covers de Laurence's entire catalogue for mystics, along with all his materials accessory to the pursuit of mystic study. That's a huge amount of censorship, considering de Laurence offered hundreds of books and thousands of magical items like incense, novelties, and curios to millions of eager customers all around the world. David Metcalf, who's the editor-in-chief of Threshold Journal of Interdisciplinary Consciousness Studies, points out that it's, well, kind of amazing that this niche publishing company was able to create real, practical results in the kind of cultural exchange that would later become central to the social engineering efforts of the US International Cooperation Administration. The Chile Project, which the US ICA took on in the 1950s, tried to influence Chile's economic development through a graduate exchange program with the University of Chicago. It actually took 2 decades for that effort, with all its official support, to really have an impact. Meanwhile, de Laurence managed to influence culture through a popular catalogue of occult curios in about the same amount of time. And for anyone who might laugh off the magic made popular by the incredibly productive Lauren W. de Laurence, it's really worth remembering that the material in his books has had a huge and often unnoticed effect on our modern culture. The magical methods you see in Harry Potter, and even the ancient truths that Time magazine's most influential person of the 20th century, Rhonda Byrne, talks about in her book The Secret, actually trace back to de Laurence's mail order mysteries. These were the very things that changed the face of global society and had a deep impact on the racially charged geopolitical climate of the 20th century. If you're looking for proof of the Curio Catalogue's claim to teach the powerful secrets of the mysterious influence of one human mind over that of others, well, it seems that shaping the fate of nations from a small office in Chicago is a pretty impressive place to start. Okay, so L.W. de Laurence was actually the first person to run a registered magical order in the United States in 1906. It wasn't Masonic in structure or order, like many of the magical orders that followed, including the Golden Dawn, OTO, and Wicca, and so it was approved. Its structure was kind of a crossover between what we now recognize as voodoo or voodoo and the spiritualist church. Now, even though Blavatsky had been running the Theosophical Society since 1875, it wasn't officially incorporated until 1907, and it wasn't officially recognized in the United States until 1934. The Rosicrucians, for instance, didn't get recognition in the United States until 1915. It's worth remembering that the Agape Lodge of the OTO, which a lot of people consider to be the first magical order in the United States, wasn't established there until 1935, so that's about 30 years later. The OTO's origins, through Theodore Roos, were directly Masonic, but because its degrees and workings were basically identical, it was seen as a clandestine lodge by the Masons, and really struggled to get approval in the United States, a country built on Masonic ideals at a time when the Masons were incredibly powerful. Similar problems plagued the Order of the Golden Dawn. It didn't actually have a temple in the United States until 1977, which is nearly 70 years after de Laurence. de Laurence's occult order, the Order of the Black Rose, was, well, pretty eclectic and egalitarian for its time. It admitted people from all social castes, races, creeds, and genders. Its teachings were this blend of Elizabethan occult practices and Eastern tantric techniques. Structurally, it was actually more similar to the Hellfire Club in the United Kingdom back in the 1700s. Then, on the 12th of November, 1912, Chicago police raided de Laurence's temple at 3340 Michigan Avenue, arresting de Laurence, his wife Pauline, and others who were there, all because of a complaint from a member named Augusta Murray. Newspapers covering the raid and the trial really focused on the claim that most male members were Negroes or Indians, and the female members were white women, and that the cult was getting up to all sorts of lurid activities, including nudity and dabbling in the dark arts. It was also reported that the chief deity of the temple was found to be a regular cigar store Indian, which was the focus of the devotions and meditations. Murray actually went public to the newspapers before the trial, saying that de Laurence practiced black magic and dressed in fantastic Eastern-style clothes, and that he would throw himself into a trance and do strange dances of the Orient. She also claimed his wife and an office assistant named Sadie Pyle were mediums for strange messages and advice from the spirit world. For all of this negative publicity, the only thing the court could actually confirm from witness statements was that Augusta Murray had been told after going through the weighing in process, which involved stripping in a closed, private, mirrored closet, that de Laurence had remarked something along the lines of her being too fat to be an angel. The courts explained to Augusta Murray that, well, this insult didn't actually breach the law. The post office inspectors returned what they called evidence, meaning the mail order stock and de Laurence books seized during the raid, confirming that de Laurence was not guilty of sending drugs or immoral literature through the mail. Ultimately, de Laurence was cleared of all accusations and was fined only $15 in municipal court for disturbing the peace by holding public interracial meetings. The cigar store Indian was confiscated and the temple was effectively disbanded. But just 1 week later, he reopened the order under the new title of the Order of the White Willow. No action was ever brought against this new order by the police. The Order of the White Willow eventually evolved into the American Catholic Church, which was a church made up of congregations that individually separated from the Roman Catholic Church. It was officially founded by Joseph René Villatte in the United States. It seems that this might also be a Gnostic lineage of wandering bishops of the Syrian Malabar lineage, coming through the Church of Malabar in India via Quran. In 1930, de Laurence was consecrated and made a bishop of this church by the spiritualist Arthur Edward Layton, who, interestingly, was both an Olympic hockey star and the son of the pre-Raphaelite artist Edmund Blair Layton. De Laurence's consecration played a big part in influencing the rise of the black spiritualist churches and the strong integration of Catholic saints with the Loa in contemporary Voodoo traditions. In fact, in 1936, the year de Laurence died, he consecrated the first bishops for these churches, including Thomas B. Watson of New Orleans. There just isn't enough evidence to support the claims of plagiarism by de Laurence. Actually, if you look at it, it's clear that many individuals have plagiarized de Laurence's writings without giving him proper credit. Most importantly, no litigation has ever been brought against de Laurence for breach of copyright. Also, the often cited copyright loophole between the United States and London during that era really couldn't be the reason for the lack of litigation. It's worth remembering that de Laurence sold books all over the world, including Europe and especially London. Customs did not impound his books for copyright breach in Europe. If a claim could have been made on the grounds of plagiarism, then the London publishers would have done so on their own soil. The lack of litigation really speaks volumes in the defense of de Laurence, showing that there was no breach, as the rights to the works had actually been sold to him by either the authors or the publisher. Modern literary historians, unfortunately, have fallen into the trap of just repeating internet summaries that only look at publication dates and don't really understand the publishing industry or its common practices from that era. It was actually quite common for writers and publishers to resell their works to multiple publishers in different countries. In fact, that practice still exists today. De Laurence reprinted many works by authors who had already been published in Europe, and one well-known example is the Lesser Key of Solomon, also called the Goetia, from 1906 by Mathers and Crowley, which de Laurence published in 1916. The friendship between Crowley and Mathers ended in 1905, when Mathers expelled Crowley from the Order of the Golden Dawn. Interestingly, that's also about the time that Crowley self-published this work, without Mathers' permission. About 10 years later, Crowley writes about Mathers being in a really bad financial state several times. He even mentions Mathers reselling his writings and, rather shockingly, pimping out his own wife. Now, if you were going to resell an esoteric manuscript and try to get back at your co-author or editor, wouldn't you want to sell it to the largest esoteric publishing house in the world and maybe leave his name out? Mathers, being who he was, would have definitely spoken out against de Laurence if he felt his work had been appropriated in the way Crowley claimed. But Mathers remains silently content. This seems to be supported by the fact that in the credits, where de Laurence takes credit as the editor, he stresses that this is the only authorized edition extant. It's kind of ironic that Crowley, with his unauthorized version, which he published without Mathers' permission, calls de Laurence a Yankee thief. Yet, in his books on hypnotism, de Laurence had been publishing about many of the subjects that Crowley wrote about, including the true will and the sun, which are Crowley's central catechisms, for a decade before Crowley even began writing. Students of Crowley's will be very familiar with these central concepts, which were written by de Laurence a decade before Crowley began writing on the topic. The fourth table is of the sun, and is made of a square of 6 and contains 36 particular numbers, whereof 6 in every side and diameter produce 111, and the sum of all is 666. There are over it divine names, with an intelligence to what is good, and a spirit to what is evil, and out of it is drawn the character of the sun and of his spirits. This being engraven on a plate of pure gold, Saul being fortunate, renders him, that wears it, renowned, amiable, acceptable, potent in all his works, and equals him to a king, elevating his fortunes and enabling him to do whatever he will. But with an unfortunate son, it makes one a tyrant, proud, ambitious, insatiable, and finally to come to an ill ending. The Great Book of Magical Arts by L.W. de Laurence from 1908, and it's still being reprinted to this day. So, let's talk a bit about Pamela Colman Smith and the de Laurence, Scott & Co. publishing house. Pamela Colman Smith, often called Pixie, was this really cute, half American, half Jamaican woman, and she actually grew up in England. She spent much of her childhood going back and forth between Jamaica and Britain, and later on, she studied art in New York as a young adult. A lot of her early creative work, like writing and illustrating books, really focused on Jamaican folklore, especially the Anansi stories, which, funnily enough, inspired Neil Gaiman's American Gods. She also got into theatrical design at one point. She was a lesbian and an early feminist, and even got involved in the suffragette movement. On top of that, she was already an author in her own right, and was a highly sought-after illustrator for children's books and government war posters. She worked for the literati of her day, people like the poet William Butler Yeats and Bram Stoker, who she affectionately called Uncle Bramey, and she was commissioned to illustrate their work. But above all, she was a visionary artist, best remembered as the illustrator of the Rider-Waite Tarot, although, sadly, she didn't receive any acknowledgement or credit for it until 1938, when literary historians started to write about her. Waite never really acknowledged the importance of Colman Smith's work. In the book that went along with the cards, he didn't even mention her by name. He just said that a young black woman artist had illustrated them under his instructions. And honestly, that kind of dismissive attitude is pretty inexcusable, considering they were equal members of the fraternal order since 1901. Pamela was a full member of the Order of the Golden Dawn, right alongside more famous names like William Butler Yeats and Florence Farr. She was even a founding member of the Golden Dawn before Arthur Waite split off with his own faction. Colman Smith originally met Waite through the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn occult organization, where they were both members. Together, they created one of the world's most popular tarot decks. Many tarot historians actually believe that most of the credit for the deck belongs to Colman Smith, not just for the artwork, but for the authorship as well. Waite himself admitted he only carefully controlled the creation of 3 cards, saying, "I saw to it that Pamela Colman, Smith, should not be picking up casually any floating images from my own or another mind. She had to be spoon-fed carefully over the priestess card, over that which is called the Fool, and over the Hanged Man. But, this actually contradicts Letters That Survive, where Waite sends Colman Smith to the British Museum to sketch from an Italian tarot deck from the 1400s, and in one of these letters, he even asks her for her interpretation of the meanings of the cards. But if you hadn't previously heard of Pamela Colman Smith, honestly, you're not alone. Her story sometimes just gets left out of tarot histories, and her name was missing from most editions of her tarot deck until fairly recently. Still, she was definitely a fascinating figure. If you're curious and want to know more about her, we'll actually be running an article on her in the next issue. So why would Waite always downplay Coleman Smith's contributions? And what could be the reason for him going so far as to later dismiss the deck as entirely his own creation? What could possibly motivate either of them to not really take credit for the deck? The deck that Coleman Smith spent days viewing and sketching copies of in the British Museum is called the Sola Busca Tarot. The Sola Busca Tarot is actually the oldest Italian deck of cards in the world, and it's named after its last owners, Count Sola and Marquis Busca. In 1924, the Ministry of Public Education recognized the value of this complete collection and its illustrations, bought the rights to it, and claimed first option to buy it, which they finally did in 2009 when the deck was put up for sale. The cards are currently kept at the Pinacoteca di Brera, which, by the way, had already acquired the Brambilla deck in 1971, a set of late Gothic cards made for the Duke of Milan. The Sola Busca is a really fine collection of miniatures, coloured with tempera and gold. Instead of traditional subjects, it features characters from ancient Greek and Roman history, plus 2 biblical villains, Nimrod and Nebuchadnezzar. The suits show allegories and scenes from daily life, and the symbolism draws from Hermetic and alchemical culture from the late 1400s. The artwork itself is attributed to Nicola di Maestro Antonio and coloured by Marine Sanudo. The Sola Busca Tarot is actually the only known deck with dynamic figures on all the cards for about 4 centuries, while the earlier Marseille decks only had numerical features on the suits. Coleman Smith's finished tarot illustrations are, honestly, almost identical to these originals. De Laurence's square yellow tarot deck, featuring the Coleman Smith artwork, first appeared in 1916, just 6 years after the release of the Rider-Waite deck, with de Laurence's own booklet called The Tarot. Now, de Laurence had already written about the tarot in his books, but not in his catalogue. His Kabbalistical Key of the Tarot was a 60-page booklet previously written by de Laurence. However, it's been speculated that the uncredited book, The Key to the Tarot, also known as Oracles Behind the Veil, that later accompanied the de Laurence Coleman Smith decks, was actually Pixie's original, unedited notes to Waite on her studies of the Sola Busca Tarot and her interpretation of their meanings. So, yeah, these facts really do comprise the most likely scenario. Additionally, it's likely that Pamela Coleman Smith, who was orphaned and couldn't receive her inheritance from her uncle until 1919, would have eagerly sold her rights to de Laurence. If Coleman Smith had sold her work to de Laurence either out of necessity or maybe even spite, why would she still be unwilling to put her name on it? Well, it's important to remember that the artwork was a direct copy of a museum piece that was privately owned, and that brought with it much greater copyright issues inherent in reproducing an exact copy than there would be by simply reselling the work to an overseas publishing house. The copyright for the Sola Busca Tarot, being privately owned and in a private collection, actually belonged to the owner of that historical deck. The owner was never credited or compensated So that's likely why neither the artist nor the author were quick to lay claim to the reproduction. Many people believed that Coleman Smith wasn't paid for her artwork by weight, and that would supposedly invalidate all successive copyright claims. But this is apparently not true. According to an interview with Mr. Kaplan of US Games, Pamela Coleman Smith sent a letter to Alfred Stieglitz in 1909 or 1910, telling him that she had just done a big job of 78 illustrations for very little money. That was the Rider-Waite Tarot deck. So, a work for hire is a work created for someone else, for which you're paid in exchange for relinquishing any claim on the rights to the work. If Coleman Smith hadn't been paid, it might call into question the chain of copyright ownership of the Rider-Waite Tarot in Europe. But since she was paid, even if it was very little, she and her heirs had no further claim on the cards in Europe. However, she was within her rights to resell the art and her other contributions to another publisher, as was A.E. Waite. So, what makes us believe that Pamela Coleman Smith would have been inclined to enter into an arrangement with Laurence? So she actually had a background in publishing herself before the arrangement with Waite. Her uncle, Theodore Smith, had a bookstore, and her maternal grandfather was the first to publish the Swedenborgian papers in the States. Additionally, she published her own magazine called The Green Sheaf and, sold limited editions of her own prints, and even taught print colorization to others. Coleman Smith also expanded from publishing to bookselling. She was really no stranger to the industry. It must be remembered that she spent much of her childhood in Jamaica. When she was in Jamaica as a child, from about 10 to about 20, she became aware of Obeah. She wrote that it was important to her, and she even invented an Obeah character for her stage act. Under the pseudonym Galukizanga, Coleman Smith would dress up and tell West Indian folk stories at private parties. She later published these stories as Anansi Stories in 1899. It should be remembered that Obeah and Voodoo are essentially belief systems based upon the writings of Laurence. Laurence was idolized in Jamaica at that time, and honestly, still is idolized there today. This is even though she was brought up as Swedenborgian, with her family very involved in that church in New York and England. So, she converts to Catholicism in 1911. But what type of Catholicism are we talking about here? It's never actually stated that she is a Roman Catholic. Even after her conversion, she's not what you'd call a typical Catholic. In an interview just after her conversion, she mentions that the first time she went to Ireland was when she first saw fairies and pixies, and that's when she became aware of Celtic spiritualism. Throughout her later years, she actually ran a boarding house for old priests in Cornwall. Oh, and by the way, if you're interested, please see our article on Crowley's death in Cornwall. So, the Catholicism she embraced was really quite different. It's worth remembering too that Laurence was a bishop of the American Catholic Church, a Gnostic lineage. There are just so many little things in both belief system and practice that tie her to Laurence. This deck still remains one of the best-selling items in the Laurence catalogue. Also, it's worth noting that the tarot got a huge boost in priority. First listed as low priority, order number 697 in 1919, all the way up to order number 20 by 1936, with a giant 2-page spread on pages 148 and 149. Modern magical amnesia and arrogance. Honestly, it astounds me that modern magical groups want to deny their heritage, claiming that they are the only true one, or that they have some ancient arcane heritage, or that they came to their understanding and practice from one direct, divine, mystical revelation, or that the heavens opened up and showed the universal truth and power to them only. However, it's actually pretty easy to trace the language, phrasing, and methods right back to Laurence. In organizations like Wicca, Voodoo, Obeah, Spiritualism, Gnosticism, the OTO, and the New Age movement in general. And you can see it in individuals who are considered groundbreakers like Atkinson, Waite, Mathers, Crowley, Cannon, Hall, Barden, and, well, many others. My point is this: no one has the right to say that there's only one true magical way, even though Laurence himself did. The admonition to be silent, to avoid the wolves in sheep's clothing, which, by the way, several later occult groups lifted from Laurence almost word for word, and he actually got it from Aesop, serves to conceal the origin of their knowledge or to prevent discussion that might reveal what they don't know. If you can't discuss it with anyone, then they've got you. We really grow when we share and discuss. Our communities get stronger, producing stronger, more magical individuals. I recently had the unfortunate experience of trying to discuss things they didn't understand with a long-established magical order, whose tenets of silence keep them locked in the past. If anyone speaks out, it's a case of the emperor's new clothes. Only a fool or an innocent would dare say there's really nothing there. Well, in my foolish innocence, I've created this magazine to share information and spark discussion. We love hearing back from you. And if you can teach me something new as well, then we both win and are evolving the world magically. Young Velo de Laurence, pictured right, actually took over the running of his family business before his father's death in 1936, after more than 125 years of changing the religious and magical landscape and individual psychology with occult mysticism plus scandal, successes, and mail order innovation. One thing above all is absolutely certain. If history is any indication, Laurence, Scott & Co. is unstoppable.